Hey everyone, it's Matt Donahue with your weekly update with Mission Financial Planners for the week ending May 3rd. We're going to jump into some market updates and economic updates. We're going to talk tax tips for farmers, so that you farmers out there will hopefully get a little something positive out of this. We will also continue down the mental health road from a healthcare tip. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so just be prepared that over the next few weeks you're going to hear a couple more things about mental health. But let's jump into it. So first of all, with the market moving news from last week, well, hey, the major indices rose for the second week in a row. They recovered a lot of the ground they lost in April, which is always good news. Last week was choppy though, right? Stocks tumbled on Tuesday before rebounding on Thursday and Friday among excuse me, amid really positive job sentiment or sentiment over the earnings and the jobs data. Job growth is moderating though. So U.S. stock indices they climbed on Friday and bond yields fell after a jobs report eased concerns about labor market induced inflationary pressures. So in other words, what that means is um, more jobs means more inflation, and that's one of the things the Fed is watching. And everyone's hopeful the Fed will eventually start to be able to lower interest rates. Earnings picked up. Earnings at some of the biggest technology companies continue to improve. FactSet reported on Friday that analysts were expecting the S&P 500 overall to post a 5% first quarter earnings increase compared to last year. Um, just a week ago, the projected growth rate was 3.5%. Yields fell. Friday's closing yield on the 10-year Treasury was 4.5%, down from 4.67 at the close of the previous week. And the S&P 500, it did fall nearly 4.2% in April, posting its first decline after 5 monthly gains in a row. Those 5 months had produced a cumulative gain of 25.3%. In April, utilities were up, averaging 1.6%. They were the only sector among 11 to generate a positive result. The real estate sector's 8.6 decline was the worst. As expected, the Fed held steady. It did not change its benchmark interest rate, and it is maintaining it at the highest level in more than 2 decades. They acknowledge that they have seen recently, I should say, a lack of further progress on bringing inflation closer to their 2% long-term target rate. That's affecting consumer confidence. So consumer sentiment fell sharply to the lowest level since 2022. A lot of consumers surveyed for the Conference Board's latest report cited concerns about inflation and jobs. So it's interesting how all this is connected. Eurozone rebound. The Eurozone's economy started 2024 on a moderately positive note as it recorded a 0.3% annual GDP growth rate in the first quarter. Tuesday's report also revised the prior quarter's figure to a negative 0.1% from an initially flat estimate. So what that means, the Eurozone was technically in a recession in the last half of last year, and its third quarter 23 result was also slightly negative. Reports this week, nothing on Monday. Tuesday, consumer credit. Wednesday, wholesale inventories from the U.S. Census Bureau. Thursday, weekly unemployment claims. Friday, University of Michigan Index of Consumer Sentiment, and the federal budget. Philosophy quote of the week. Okay, this one's a long one. Righteousness is beautiful. If you ever wonder where we're getting these from, the philosophy quotes come from Ryan Holiday, who's just a terrific writer. But righteousness is beautiful. So this is kind of a long one, but I'll read it to you. Then what makes a beautiful human being? Isn't it the presence of human excellence? Observe those whom you praise without prejudice, the just or the unjust. Choose the just. The even tempered or the undisciplined. Choose the even tempered. The self controlled or the uncontrolled. The self controlled. In making yourself that kind of person, you will become beautiful. But to the extent you ignore those qualities, you'll be ugly, even if you use every trick in the book to appear beautiful. That's from Epictetus, his meditations. So, what does that mean? I'll just say it. Today we have a really weird sense of what is physically beautiful between airbrushing, people getting spray tans, Botox, I mean, all these things. And I'm not condemning them. I mean, you do what you do to look good, and that's fine. And if it makes you feel good, that's fine. But are you really taking care of what's underneath? And that's maybe a more important question, right? Because looks fade. They do. So for me, it turns into more of a question about, are you trying to do the right things? All right, let's talk about some tax tips for farmers. Here's 10 things the IRS lists about farm income and expenses that can help at tax time. Crop insurance proceeds, insurance payments from crop damage count as income. Generally, you should report those payments in the year received. There's a lot of deductible farm expenses, though. Farmers can deduct ordinary and necessary expenses they paid for their business. Ordinary expenses, again, are common and accepted costs for that type of business. A necessary expense is simply a cost that is appropriate for that business. You can deduct reasonable wages you paid to your full and part-time employees. You have to withhold Social Security, Medicare, and income taxes from their wages. Sale of items purchased for resale, especially livestock. If you bought if you sold livestock or items that you bought for resale, you have to report the sale. Your profit or loss, of course, is the difference between your selling price and your basis. Basis is usually, as I'm sure you all know, just the cost of the item. The cost may also include other amounts that you paid, such as sales tax and freight. Kind of interesting. Repayment of loans, you can only deduct the interest you paid on a loan if the loan is used for your farming business. You cannot deduct interest you paid on a loan for things that you used for personal use. Okay, so run it all under the farm. Weather-related sales, bad weather such as drought or flood may force you to sell more livestock than you normally would in a year. If so, you might be able to delay reporting a gain from the sale of the extra animals. Net operating losses, if your expenses are more than your income for the year, you may have a net operating loss. You can carry that loss over to other years and deduct it, and you may get a refund of part or all of the income tax you paid in the prior years. You may also be able to lower your tax bill in future years. Farm income averaging, this is something only farmers can do, at least currently. This is something only farmers can do. You might be able to average some or all of the current year's farm income by spreading it out over the last 3 years. This may lower your taxes if your farm income is high in the current year and low in one or more of the past 3 years. Farmers are, like I said before, the only ones who can do this. Fuel and road use, you might be able to claim a tax credit or refund of excise taxes you paid on fuel used for your farm and farming purposes. And then our friend, the QBI, the Qualified Business Income Deduction. The IRS gives you a deduction of up to 20% of the profits just for being a business owner. Also, if you are a farmer or a rancher forced to sell your livestock because of drought, flood, hurricane, or other natural disasters, there might be some special IRS tax relief. The IRS does extend time to replace livestock that you were forced to sell due to a drought, and if you're eligible, this can help you to defer tax on any of the gains you got from the forced sales. The relief extends to all or part of the states and Puerto Rico affected by drought. A couple other things to think about, and this comes directly from the IRS. Deferred tax on drought sales. If the drought caused you to sell more livestock than usual, you might be able to defer tax on the extra gains. Replacement period. You generally must replace livestock within a 4-year period to postpone the tax. The IRS can extend that period if the drought continues. The IRS will grant more time. There's an additional year to the replacement period for eligible farmers and ranchers. The extension usually applies to certain sales due to drought. Livestock sales that apply. Hey, if you're eligible, your gains on sales of livestock that you held for draft, dairy, or breeding purposes apply. The livestock sales that don't apply, other livestock, like those you raised for slaughter or held for sporting purposes and poultry, you don't get that kind of relief. To figure out if you're in one of those areas, go to the IRS website and check to see what current areas are eligible for that. So interesting stuff on farmers and taxes. Health tip of the week. So again, like I said at the introduction today, mental health, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, so we're going to continue with the mental health theme for the month. But couple things from the Mayo Clinic on this. What's considered normal? Oh boy. Patterns in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors can suggest when to get help for yourself or someone you care about. Okay, so I would imagine that most of us have maybe wondered every now and then, am I crazy or am I, whatever? And mental health is really, not that simple. It's the overall wellness of how you think, how you regulate your feelings, and how you behave. And sometimes things throw you out of whack, right? Whether it's an experience you went through or maybe a chemical imbalance of some kind. But a mental health disorder can affect a lot of different aspects of your life. Um, and if you're concerned about, is there a real mental health disorder? Here's some of the things you want to think about. Is there a medical history of physical illness or mental health disorders in you or your family? Okay. Um, have you had a complete physical to rule out some kind of condition that might be causing some symptoms you're worried about? Um, you might have some questions about your current concerns, right? Or maybe, people may wonder why you're seeking help. Questions about your recent events or changes in your life. trauma, relationships, work, death of someone you care about, those will affect the way you think, feel, or behave. Um, you might have some questions as well about past and current alcohol and drug use. Is that coming back to haunt you in some way? But there's a lot there, right? So when do you know that maybe I need to go and do something, right, or have this really looked into? Well, it comes down to a couple key things. First is, have you noticed your personality's changed lately? Have your eating patterns changed, or have your sleeping patterns changed? Are you finding it difficult to cope with problems, or just regular daily activities? Do you feel disconnected or withdrawn from normal activities? Do you have unusual or magical thinking? Okay, that could be kind of scary, right? Excessive anxiety, prolonged sadness, depression, or apathy, thoughts or statements about suicide or harming others. Are you abusing drugs or alcohol? Do you have big mood swings? Do you have excessive anger, hostility, or violent behavior? These are all symptoms, right? And if you're concerned about your mental health, just get some help, right? Get some help. Start with your doctor, right? Make an appointment with a psychiatrist, psychologist, or any kind of mental health professional, right? Go talk to your minister, right? Or your rabbi or your imam, whatever you've got, right? But get out there and talk to someone about this and have someone take a look at it, because the last thing anybody wants is to see something that was treatable turn into a disaster for you or the people you care about. Well, on that positive note, people, just remember, take care of yourselves. We will see you all next week. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great week. See you next week. Bye bye.